Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. We made it. It is week one, and I am Patrick Daugherty here to break down the entire opening slate with Mr. Denny Carter and Mr. Kyle Dvorchak. I say we made it, but is that actually true? Are you guys done drafting? Are you hollowed out shells of men? Can you never be texted ever again in your life? OTC prayer
OTC.
emoji.
I'm on the clock on DraftKings right now, so I'm not done.
Oh my God, it's Thursday. Just let it be. Sure, I just quite literally made my final draft pick of the summer before we went on the air. But you should have been done drafting days ago.
Well,
sure
I was going to say,
right?
you thought it was cool to be done drafting 10 minutes ago, and that was the hard cutoff. Once you made the final pick, you're like, no one. I get the last pick of the summer, and I took a pick, and you're like, no. Cutoff was 3 p.m., and it's 3:07.
Last pick
I haven't made a draft
George,
pick since,
by the way.
Yeah, I haven't made a draft pick since July 30th. So
I believe it. Denny, he runs and hides from managed leagues. He's DFS. He's now best ball. He's only in like 7 or 8 home leagues. Like, it's really kind of pathetic, to be honest.
I'm in 6 leagues, 3 of which I care about very much.
Yeah, that's about it. If you really care about more than 3 leagues, better get ready to learn like a spleen surgery, buddy, because you're just gonna like die from stress. And we gotta remove your spleen. I have no idea what it has to do with this.
if you care deeply about like 8 or 10 leagues, then everything that happens on a Sunday is both good and bad.
Yes, yeah, I know, it's true.
It's disastrous on one level and it's fantastic on another.
I know. I tried to. What is the proper line between running back the same guys, but then like having too much risk, too much exposure, but then like diversifying too much? Where there's no difference between good and bad football things. There's a fine line. We all walk, Kyle Dvorchak, but I'm assuming you know how to do it better than anyone.
I would say I think I might be a little too nitty. Like I might be too it's really dangerous to get above 20% exposure on anyone. Like you don't want to be. What about your risk adjusted rate of return? Have you considered your Kelly criterion? I'm only betting quarter Kelly on this one. Like really dumb stuff where I'm like trying not to have my entire summer, fall, and early in the next spring ruined by one Jalen Polk ankle tweak. But like when you're drafting a ton, I do feel like I don't want my entire summer, fall, and spring ruined by one Jalen Polk ankle tweak, as fun as it is to have drafted a lot of Jalen Polk. So I'm probably a little more on the conservative side. If you're doing just like six home leagues and it's like not really much of a financial investment to you and you're just trying to like beat your friends by saying you knew Jalen Polk was a smash, I'd literally just take them in all 6. I don't care.
Devin A. our weary nation.
Yeah, exactly.
Turns its lonely eyes to your ligaments and tendons. Please, God, remain intact. Same with your muscles too. Please, yes. And by the way, after quite literally the first thing I'm doing after the show is making a list of all the services I need to check tonight. What the hell is Flea Flicker?
I'm not kidding. I have that list. I have a schedule
I do too.
Yep. I have a schedule for work, so I remember what articles I write, and somewhere on there I have little half-hour blocks for check Flea Flicker, ESPN, Sleeper. I don't think I have any Yahoo this year. So
nope, you do, buddy. You're wrong about that. Remember?
Wait, are you serious?
Our league's on Yahoo. Where you been, man? Read your email.
Apparently, I have one on RT Sports.
Oh yeah,
I have a best ball in RT Sports, but no redraft. So.
My main home league is in RT Sports, but our main preview show is going to begin right after this. Week 1 is here. The season begins with NFL kickoff Thursday night in Kansas City. Then on Friday, it's a battle between 2 high-powered NFC offenses when the Packers and Eagles face off in Brazil exclusively on Peacock. Sure, we've got some great deals on Peacock right now. It's really, honestly, a great streaming service. They did not pay me to say that, but it's good. I've been watching the old soccer, the old round ball on it. But tomorrow night, it's all about American football as the Packers look to build off the hype. The Eagles look to move past the collapse as 2 of the NFC's best teams square off in Sao Paulo. Again, only on Peacock this Friday evening, guys. Denny, we'll start you with the impossible question no one had an answer for all summer long. How do you sort these Packers receivers heading into week 1? And is the answer as simple as we need a game, man? Like I need a game to see what happens with these guys.
It would be nice to have some real data, and we're going to get that on Friday night, and that's good. Here's what I have about these Packers receivers. So if you look at like their usage and their opportunities from last year when they were all on the field, it's very frustrating. I have a very frustrating one I wanted to share with the listeners real quick. the first read target rate for the three main receivers in Green Bay. You ready for this? Christian Watson, 21%. Jaden Reed, 21%. Romeo Dobbs, 20%.
Wow.
So
no one wants that. Nobody wants a balanced attack or offense.
I
Like,
mean,
come on, man.
and you remember Matt LaFleur says he's gonna exorcist vomit if he hears wide receiver one more time.
Wow.
He doesn't want to hear it, and they're not going to operate that way. I will say Vic Fangio, the new defensive coordinator for the Eagles, tends to play a lot of too high safeties.
Man, we're not done. I thought the too high thing was going to be gone this year. I thought they would.
They didn't ban that thing.
They didn't ban it. I know, really.
I mean, I've asked Congress. I've written strongly worded letters to my congressman. He has not responded. Jamie Raskin, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So he did, lots of too high. I think we're going to see a heavy dose of Josh Jacobs here, but as far as the receivers go, I think it's going to be more of a Jaden Reed type situation than a Christian Watson situation.
Really? I think it's Christian. I just keep going back to the logic of like, who is the best player in this receiver core?
Yeah.
I still haven't seen evidence that it's not Christian Watson. He's the most injury prone player.
Last year, he was not very good. He was hurt, but also, you'll never believe it. Christian Watson was hurt.
He was hurt. But listen,
I have real quick. Jordan Love from a clean pocket last year had the 9th highest deep rate, and Nick Fangio's defense last year.
Vic, you said Vic earlier.
What did I say?
You were saying Nick, I think.
Nick is his brother. I'm sorry. I know him. I play golf with him on Tuesdays. Vic Fangio had one of the lowest blitz rates last season. If that keeps up, I think Love will actually be operating from a clean pocket. And like I said, he went deep often from a clean pocket. So it could, could be a little Watson, could be a little Reed.
Well, Kyle, we're the Packers. We need more data because we need answers because we just don't know how things are going to shake out with this unproven skill core. Unproven's a bit strong, but we just need more answers with the Packers skill core. We have all of our answers with the Eagles skill core, at least when it comes to personnel. It's A.J. Brown, it's Devonta Smith, it's Dallas Goedert, it's now Saquon Barkley. But are there any lingering concerns for the Eagles after a very stunning collapse down the stretch this year, where they just looked like they had never played offense before? They got blown out of the building by the Bucs in the playoffs. What should we expect with, maybe fake sharp Kellen Moore now calling the shots? Are we concerned, or is this just an obvious bounce back spot for a super talented group of players?
Yeah, the fact that the turn was so sharply at basically the moment Jalen Hurts busted up his knee and played through it for the entire season. I was looking back, I was like, so what, did he miss 2 or 3 games? The knee issue was the entire talk of town for 2 months. He had to have missed games. Nope, they just kept putting him out there. I was so confident he missed 2 games. And no, they kept putting him out there. And I mean, it wasn't like he was terrible, but you could see the teams not only did their advanced stats shift meaningfully in the first 7 weeks, he got hurt in week 7. They had a 62% early down pass rate, the 3rd highest. Hurts was 10th in deep throw rate. Not only that shift to 50% early down pass rate, just outside the top 20, and a 23rd highest deep rate. You just saw it on their faces, man. They were playing so conservative and scared over that second half of the season after being vaguely, analytics is this broad term that team has high PROE. I call them analytics. They're playing very forward modern football for about 2 months. And that's when we were on the AJ Brown streak of whatever it was 125, some arbitrary threshold, but 125-yard games, 5 or 6 of them in a row. The offense was just absolutely churning. And then as soon as Hurts gets hurt, that's it. Kind of the offense completely goes into its shell and coasted into the most obvious quote upset to end their season. I don't think we need Kellen Moore to be that sharp. Just use the talent you have and stay healthy. Honestly, I think they should have played a little more risky with Hurts' knee, because the way they played at the end of the season was Hurts' knee is hurt, season's over. Well, okay, then just they did just give up.
They gave up. It was palpable.
It was we can't let Hurts' knee get hurt anymore, but you stopped doing the things that made you good in the first place. So just get back to that. And I don't think it's that hard to say, throw the ball to AJ Brown, Devonta Smith a lot. Let Hurts bomb it deep. These are very obvious things that I think Kellen Moore probably isn't the sharpest mind in football. Doesn't really have to be to get there.
He's a fraud. It's a shame. You didn't mention Dallas Goedert there. Do either one of you want to take a crack at a Dallas Goedert bounce back season? Had a lot of injury problems, was not nearly as productive last year. who's really falling in drafts. He's like barely being drafted as a tight end one. Denny, do you take umbrage with that? Should he have been drafted higher this summer?
Yeah, so I actually noticed in best ball drafts on DraftKings particularly, Taysom Hill is now going ahead of Goddard. And
tell you who loves that is the bank examiner. Like the new Lincoln is arriving fresh in his driveway in 2 weeks. If you keep drafting Taysom Hill.
The examiner is looking powerfully into that ADP shift. All right, so so Goddard, with the injuries and stuff, it's hard to say if those played a factor here. But so in 2021, he had a 20.5% target per route run. So he's targeted on 20.5% of his routes, which is strong, right? 2022, that drops to 17.5. 2023, it's at 18%. So he hasn't gotten back there, which is, I think, a little concerning. Again, could be the injuries. I think that, good thing from last year, I know this is a different offense, but he did have a career high 54% slot rate last year. And that's good because tight ends are more efficient from a fantasy standpoint from the slot. This offense is going to look a lot different because last year they hardly used motion at all. And Kellen Moore was, I think, used the eighth most, used motion at the eighth.
Frauds love motion. Frauds absolutely love motion.
I think what you mean is nerds who cheat.
That is more what I meant. That is more what I meant because it is hugely effective. Yes.
And it is hugely effective. And AJ Brown has been like criminally good with motion use. So I do think this is an AJ Brown blow up spot. I think.
Oh, let's go. I have one more note on them. Everyone says Kellen Moore targets the slot. Like, are you telling me he had Keenan Allen last year? Because that's all that says to me is that he didn't throw to Quentin Johnston. And then the year before that, he had CeeDee Lamb. What do you think he did with CeeDee Lamb, who plays out of the slot? Take a guess. Before that, he was throwing to Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, pure outside receivers. So I'm not really like trying to eye up like, who's playing in the slot more often? It's AJ Brown, like Denny said. How about the giant, massive, awesome freak football player who's good and efficient every year and scores a bunch of fantasy points? Just go with him.
1,400 yards back-to-back seasons. By the way, Taysom Hill over Dallas Goedert, that is known as the Bank Examiner Lincoln Continental Memorial ADP because he is getting a new luxury sedan if you keep making picks like that. Kyle, the game I am most looking forward to in week one is, of course, the Arthur Smith Bowl in Atlanta, Georgia. The Falcons are getting about 3.5 points on the old Steelers. Let's just stick with the home squad for now, though. Kirk Cousins, honestly, after being like the big fish in free agency, received 0 summer fantasy buzz. Part of that's because he's Kirk Cousins. We've been talking about him for a year. Like, we know the deal with Kirk Cousins. But what if we don't? He's now 36, coming off a torn Achilles. It's a high upside supporting cast, but still a very unproven supporting cast. What is the state of Kirk Cousins heading into week one? Was it a mistake to I don't think did we ever say his name on the show. I mean, I guess we probably did. But
I mean, after a few weeks after the Penix pick, give that 2 weeks to simmer, right? After that, we put the lid on the pan and we probably honestly never mentioned Kirk Cousins again. But it's like you said, we know what he is. He is a statuesque pocket passer whose job from a fantasy perspective is to deliver the ball to the guys we want. Please do your job, Kirk. As someone who isn't worried about this immediate Kyle Pitts hamstring injury at all, who's didn't throw his phone through a wall for the third time this week. Just get it to the guys we want to get it to is all we need. As far as his fantasy output goes, like I said, he's I don't think he's ever rushed for more than 200 yards. He goes in a range of similar players like Matthew Stafford, who's going to sit back there and throw a lot of passes to receivers we want to be targeting in fantasy. Do we care that much about Stafford? Aaron Rodgers, he's going to throw a lot to Garrett Wilson. Is he going to run 40 something off an Achilles? No. I doubt it. At 33, he was real spry running. Not going to be that way. The only guy who I think has legitimate upside, and you really have to squint, we'll talk about it later, is Justin Herbert. You have to throw away a lot of your priors on what his offense is going to be. But as far as talent goes, like a 5,000-yard passer, I think I literally was, right? So at this point in the draft, I just take drafts are over. Not for me, but, for the normal people, drafts are over. You just wanted whoever paired up with your early round picks well, and feel free to cut this guy in 2 weeks. So-and-so has Justin Fields is starting in 3 weeks. Cut Kirk Cousins, pick up Justin Fields. Daniel Jones is running for 65 yards a game. He's running for his life, but it's a scam as old as time, as old as Tim Tebow. Pick him up, whatever. So no, I don't think we overlooked Kirk Cousins, really.
I just still contend too that we overestimated how good the Falcons skill core was heading into free agency. Boy, do they need Darnell Mooney. Boy, do I kind of need Darnell Mooney because he was one of the only values, quote unquote, at receiver. Denny, Kyle Pitts is never a value, which is a kind of a stunner since he's never been good. Will it count this time with Kyle Pitts? He was going a lot higher in expert leagues, not as much in more of our home, well-adjusted leagues. Does it count with Kyle Pitts in 2024?
Man, no, I don't think it's going to count. Honestly, I looked so hard for a path to describing with numbers why he can be good, and I just don't see it. I actually don't think he's good. You look at his open score, his ESPN.
Sure, would be nice if he had a position. Yeah, tell us about the open score.
It's his open score is in line since the start of 2022. It's in line with Harrison Bryant and Cole Kmet. Okay. And
yet I'm told Cole Kmet isn't good.
He's not. Pitts in 2023 had the 7th lowest target per route run among tight ends with at least 50 targets. The 7th lowest. Like, he doesn't command targets. He doesn't get open, right? The Steelers played 2 high safeties at a pretty low rate, which means that they're shutting down the middle of the field often, which is where we're hoping that Pitts gets involved more. Holy cow, man, this is ugly. I mean, it's really, really ugly for Pitts. I think throughout the season and in this game in particular. This game, by the way, started at 45.5 points. It's down to 42 as the total. And that's probably high. Yeah, this is really going to be a hideous game. But Pitts is, I think I think you're trying to not play Pitts, but you probably have to because you drafted him in the 7th or whatever.
Denny, who scores more PPR fantasy points this season? Not a bit.
No.
Taysom Hill or Kyle Pitts?
That's hard. Taysom.
Well, you got to count for like a 12 touchdown edge for Taysom Hill because Kyle Pitts is
Right.
even in his 1,200-yard season,
Right.
he's scoring
So
2, and
Pitts,
Taysom could go for 400 yards. He's throwing
Right.
3, rushing 8, catching 9.
I'd like what? And I would ask Kyle Pitts, who's a very fine young man, very nice guy. What exactly do you do? Because I don't know.
What do you do? We would like to know. We've been trying to figure it out, except for lose everyone money. Lose these beautiful, wonderful people money. Sure, I personally have never once drafted Kyle Pitts, which is why I do still have my home and why I've held the Bank Examiner at bay. The only reason I still have my beautiful home here in suburban St. Louis. But I tell you what, the second I got weak and falter, if I take Kyle Pitts, it's not just the Lincoln Continental the bank's getting. It's my house.
No. It's a housing crisis at that point.
It is. I was going to ask Kyle's counter take, but we don't have time to talk more Kyle Pitts. We'll talk about him all year. So week 2, does it count? He scored 1 touchdown on 4 targets. So surely now he's good. Kyle, a guy we all really like is Jaylen Warren. He's someone we were really in on early in the offseason, but he missed a ton of like Arthur Smith's install in training camp with a hamstring injury. It appears he's going to play week 1. But how concerned are we with Jaylen Warren's kind of sleepy summer and now the hamstring injury that he's still at least listed with on the injury?
Yeah, if you don't want to play him in week 1, that's fine. Like I don't love playing a committee back with a hammy issue going into week 1. It's fine. I'm going to play him because I drafted him on every team. Why wouldn't I play him? But I mean, to me, this summer, obviously the injury wasn't great, but as far as all the reporting goes, it was consistently Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin saying, we have a great top 2. We have top 2 backs. We love our top 2. And you're not drafting, or at least I hope you weren't drafting Jaylen Warren because you think he can do the Kyron, where he literally gets his teammate cut. He's that much better than him. Like,
can he do the Pollard? That's what we really want to know is, can he do the Pollard?
Yeah, that's what you kind of hope for. He doesn't even have to get as many touches as Pollard. He just has to not suck as bad as Pollard did last year. And I don't think that's a likely outcome. Ironically, both of them are going into the season recovering from injuries. Let's not draw that parallel. But the Pollard injury was egregious. It was a bad injury, whereas supposedly the Warren one doesn't seem that bad. I think given his price and given what like you're starting him as a flex, or if you like start a third running back or multiple flexes,
he's on the borderline. I think I have him ranked as low as I'll have him ranked all season. Like the
definitely. This is the lowest you're gonna have him. But they talked about a true committee, which we saw last year too, a true committee. He was only drafted at the points he scored last year, giving him no room to improve, despite we know this offense is going to run a ton. They're actually going to do it well. They're going to do it too often, obviously, but when they do it, which will be often, they'll be relatively efficient at it. And the one thing that, like you said, we didn't get much quotes on any of these guys, frankly, because the entire talk of town every single week, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. The one thing we got consistently was pass pro. They talked up his pass pro time and time again. Mike Tomlin said they use him as the opening guy in pass pro drills to set the tone for the entire practice. Like, if that's not some awesome Tomlin hardo stuff, I don't know what is. Alex Highsmith said he is the best pass blocking running back in the league. He got fined last year for throwing a pass block too hard. I believe he appealed and it was rescinded. That's what we want, especially from an Arthur Smith, Mike Tomlin, sort of more old school, traditional quotes. Don't tell me that you think he can make explosives or whatever. Like, that's something Zach Taylor says. Just tell me he blows a dude up in pass pro, and I think he's going to be out there for snaps that matter. That's
actually something I hadn't considered. I mean, Warren has dog levels that have frankly never been seen. And that plays well with Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin. So that's a good point, Kyle.
Denny, speaking of dog levels, there's George Pickens. We don't really have any questions about George Pickens. We have questions about his ultimate ceiling and what could be a limited, frustrating offense. But are there any Steelers worth caring about beyond George Pickens and the running backs? Pat Freiermuth, for instance. Do we care about any of these other Steelers?
Yeah, I mean, no. Honestly, no. Calvin Austin might be involved in like the short areas.
I heard that one last year. Stop.
I'm sorry. I got to say something. I mean, but no. I mean, remember without Deontay Johnson last year, Pickens saw basically 50% of the air yards and 30% of the targets. I don't think that continues, but it just shows how dominant he can be. Also, I know I just referenced the open score, but Pickens' open score is crazy. So he creates separation. He becomes a good target for his quarterbacks, and even a guy like Russell Wilson, I believe, can get him the ball.
Well, yeah, Pickens improved his open and separation type metrics and on tape last year to a degree that I think matters. Like, he was, as a rookie, clearly just that, like, go up and make a play kind of guy. Yeah. I think he got meaningfully better last year.
Arthur Smith, challenge accepted on ruining George Pickens. Wow. We look forward to seeing how he does it. And another early hype bowl, kind of like the Eagles and Packers, the Texans look to carry over last year's momentum as the Colts hope to establish some of their own at home, Denny. The Texans have the star power. The Colts have the greater intrigue, namely quarterback Anthony Richardson, who flashed last year but then suffered 3 separate unique injuries, the third of which was season-ending. How worried are we about this young man's health after that injury-marred campaign? And we focused on the negative fairly often with Anthony Richardson this summer. What's the positive? What's the lay of the land with Anthony Richardson right now?
By the way, posting on the X platform that he's only started 17 games since high school seemed to blow people's minds. I thought that was relatively well known, but apparently not. So this is a guy who's still learning on the job. He's apparently fine from the injury. He's worked on arm angles and different sort of deliveries, and you saw that a little bit in the preseason. But again, his preseason completion rate was in line with last year, around 50%, which was in line with his college completion rate, which is about 50%. I struggle to see where the upside is going to be from.
Just say it, man. You want to say get ready to learn Joe Flacco.
Yeah. I mean, eventually. Yeah, not this week, but eventually. And So I mean, rushing wise, his scramble rate's not that high either.
Very limited sample size, Denny.
I know, but that's what we're working with here. The guys like barely played football in his life, and we're working with a very small sample size. But he's
small sample size. I will say what we saw last year was Trey Lance, but good. That is what I saw from Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. So he could get there. Yeah, he'd get there with rushing. The passing though, man, it's got to improve.
Kyle, any counter takes on Mr. Anthony Richardson? And is Michael Pittman still a money printing machine in the PPR leagues, or A.D. Mitchell and his outside prowess a threat to Mr. Pittman, who I didn't draft Michael Pittman a single time. I just am foreseeing bad things for Michael Pittman. I know it's not really necessarily a unique take, but he is someone like the negative case seemed all too easy to come to fruition for Michael Pittman. But yeah, tell us where we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the process of Shane Steichen making Anthony Richardson a good quarterback in the NFL will be moving away from Michael Pittman, because looking at, again, I totally agree with Denny. It's a limited sample last year because it's all a limited sample with Anthony Richardson. Was really poor on short throws, really poor on intermediate throws, actually above league average on deep throws. And that's what his college tape and numbers were, was a guy who just could not hit the layups, but had a really good arm that was accurate. It wasn't just like a big arm. He was accurate on his deep throws. And that was where his best throws, the few of them that there were, came in his limited rookie sample. What do you do with that? You probably don't go more Michael Pittman, or even as much Michael Pittman as you did last year. Over 70% of Pittman's targets have come less than 10 yards downfield, not just last year, but in 3 of his 4 seasons. That's
this has got to stop, man. These scams, man. Like Michael Pittman, this is not football. This is not fantasy football. This stuff needs to stop. It needs to stop.
And I think the way you stop it is through the spotty efficiency, but beautiful big play making Adonai Mitchell. I think that's how you... And that's why they drafted him. And then as soon as they were asked about, I forget if it was the GM or head coach, was asked about like, oh, what about his character concerns? They immediately shot them down. And then in training camp, they had nothing but good things to say about him. He immediately makes a push to be a starting wide receiver. The preseason usage was, oh, we move him to the slot a little bit. We'll play him outside. We'll get him in 12 personnel. It wasn't like we see with like Javon Baker or Jermaine Burton, especially, where like, yeah, cool. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a redshirt year before week 1. It's the exact opposite of that. So
Jermaine Burton will be sweating at Final Cuts next year, I think.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, it does kind of have that vibe. And that could have been AD Mitchell. Like, that could have been where we went. That's sort of some of the reports we got ahead of time. But the highs were so high in college, and the highs match the style of play that Anthony Richardson is designed to play. I think from a fantasy perspective, the hope is that, like, he's Drew Lock or Blake Bortles who can run for 1,000 yards. And like, yeah, that guy is also just going to have some stinker of games where the long shots don't get home. He throws for 220 and a pick and the rushing isn't enough, but he's going to have some 2 rushing touchdown, 3 bomb passing touchdown games. That is why I think he's a good, not the best quarterback pick out there, but still I think was a fine quarterback pick and a very strong weekly play.
Really just feel like there was not enough discourse on Anthony Richardson over the summer. Which, again, we've been focused more on the negative case. The positive case is he rushes for 1,000 yards, that kind of thing. But yeah,
I think it's hard with a guy that young who came out of nowhere to become a top 5 draft pick, because it sounds like you're rooting against him if you critique. You know, if you raise the negative case, it sounds like you're saying, "Oh, this guy's done." We don't like. I mean, I root for him. I think he just seems like
it.
No, listen, like he seems like an incredibly like decent young guy.
We don't care.
And I want him to succeed. Also, it's my job to look very powerfully into these numbers, and the numbers aren't good.
Actually, I've noticed I never draft the people who are rumored to not be good people. So yeah, we do like that Anthony Richardson is good. By the way, you said Dunn. Speaking of Dunn, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, done. I'm hoping it's done for Michael Pittman. Well, Adonai Mitchell takeover season.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Downs is not done.
Adonai Mitchell takeover season. Denny, real quick. Speaking of young quarterbacks who make good, C.J. Stroud took the league by storm as a rookie. Understandably, has vaulted in kind of to the elite tier quarterback in fantasy football, but only a 4.6 touchdown percentage last year. That's got to be a lot higher if you're going to be in like the Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott range. We certainly think he has the skills to do that. We hopefully think he has the offensive approach to do that this year, the weapons to do that. But how sure are we that Stroud, is already like in that Burrow, Dak Prescott tier of kind of like, he's a really good athlete, but he wasn't a dual threat last year.
No.
How sure are we that CJ Stroud is in this tier for good?
I think he is. I'll raise one concern in just a second, but just to review for folks who forget how good CJ Stroud was in his rookie year, he was second in a stat called net adjusted yards per attempt, which is a really good, like, holistic stat for how efficient a passer is. He was second only to Brock Purdy, of course, Brock Purdy, because he's in the Shanahan system. Stroud had the 4th lowest turnover worthy pass rate. Okay, so like not making
not a real stat per Geno Smith, but yeah.
No, our guy Gino doesn't like that one because he's not good in it. But the one concern is that Stroud had the 7th highest pressure to sack rate last year. So he's still taking a good amount of sacks when he gets pressured. You look at the elite of the elite, the Mahomes, the Burrow, the Allens, they do not take sacks when they're
Anthony
pressured.
Richardson. One
Correct.
thing he does
Anthony,
very
yeah,
well.
yeah, for sure. That's a big plus for AR-15, as the kids are calling them. I've never felt more old in my life.
Come on, man.
Yeah, so Stroud can definitely do it. And by the way, he is going to shred this Colts secondary. This Colts secondary is so bad. They're not going to put any pressure on him. He's gonna. I mean, it's this thing where you hope he can get there in the first half, because the Texans are just going to be running the ball in the second half.
Love to hear it. I did feel nervous every time I took CJ Stroud this year, because we're assuming a lot when we put him alongside Joe Burrow and Dak Prescott, but I just see no reason to expect him not to take that step. And he wasn't. There's a belief that he was already there. He was not there in terms of statistical output last year. In terms of skills, it's definitely looked that way.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that he'll do it. CJ Stroud, one of the players I'm most looking forward to watching this year. The reloading Buffalo Bills host the rebuilt Arizona Cardinals as nearly touchdown home favorites. Kyle Dvorchak. The Bills receiver core was a frequent topic of summer discussion, but we rarely discussed the Cardinals receiver core. Are we underrating the possibility of a special Marvin Harrison Jr. rookie season? I think someone was talking about this on Twitter recently, where, I feel like there wasn't negative Marvin Harrison Jr. stuff, but, there's a lot of debate. Like, can we really take a guy who's never played in the NFL in the top 12 receivers? It's a fair question, but man, this guy's a special prospect, maybe the best since Julio Jones. Are we underrating the possibility we might see something special?
I mean, I don't know. You guys might be. I wasn't. So do with that what you will. I mean, like you said, I think that's an apt description. Probably the best prospect since Julio Jones. Maybe you can put him up in that sort of Amari Cooper.
He's at least the best prospect since Jamar. He's maybe the best prospect since Amari.
I think he's cleanly better than Jamar, because we only got one elite season from Jamar, because he just held out his final season, or held out, whatever. He didn't play his final season. That just creates a little bit of risk. Do it twice. And that's what Marv did, and he got better in his final season, despite that offense being worse. So to me, I do think it's perfectly fine to draft in the top 12 receivers, especially for most people who are drafting in home leagues. He wasn't going at the 1-2 turn like he was in best ball drafts and underdog and DraftKings drafts. And I was shocked to learn this. Cardinals are pretty solid after Kyler returned. They were 9th in EPA per play. They played slow. They played run heavy, but it ultimately did produce an efficient offense. And I'm not.
The Cardinals were so well coached last year.
They were a very well coached team, and I'm not going to pencil them in for this, horrifically slow, uber balanced offense, because last year they were getting Kyler Murray off of a catastrophic knee injury entering midseason. I get that they probably wanted to protect him and install him in increments to a new offense again. So I don't think it's just looking at last year's Kyler data saying, well, that's just how they're going to play. But I do think the fact that they called up an offense that was really efficient does matter. And that offense had no pass catching talent. And outside of Marv, still has no pass catching talent at receiver. Like Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson, as fun as they are as fantasy sleepers, were dreadful last year, 60th and 71st in yards per route run.
Don't share those stats.
They were both very poor in open score, and their yards per route run did not get better when Kyler Murray returned. They're just wide receiver 4-5.
Kyle, what do I always say? Everything looks bad if you remember it. So you don't need to share those stats.
Yes, you do, Dad. You tell me that every night before bed. Trey McBride, a very good pass catching talent. I think he has a chance to be the tight end 1 overall. These other guys are not particularly good, and that creates an opening for a 28% target share and 35% air yard share from Kyler Murray, who is better than most top 5 draft picks get to catch passes from. I don't think he's a elite quarterback, but a lot of just down the road, next pick in the draft or whatever, Daniel Jones is throwing to you. Malik Neighbors, have fun with that. As much as, we can quibble about where we think Kyler Murray is, it's light years better than Daniel Jones.
Both of these teams play a lot of 2 high safeties. The safeties will never be higher than in this game. That means McBride and Kincaid are just going to eat underneath. I think both of them could have pretty crazy games here.
Denny, James Conner was a viable fantasy player's name who, again, we just didn't utter over the summer. No one wants to talk about James Conner for obvious reasons. Is he still an RB2? Trey Benson is in town. A lot of people are excited about Trey Benson. James Conner has the injury history, is on the older side. Is James Conner still an RB2?
Yeah, I think he is, because he's going to see all the red zone, all the inside the 10 work. I looked at the numbers when Kyler came back for 8 games last year. James Conner only ran a route on 43% of Kyler's dropbacks during that stretch. He averaged about 3 targets per game. So really just not much involvement at all in the passing attack. Arizona did have the 6th lowest neutral pass rate over Kyler's 8 games. So they really established it fairly hard. And they had the league's lowest pass rate when leading, right? So when they got the lead, they just sat on it and they just fed James Conner. If they do that again this year, and who knows, maybe Harrison coming into the offense changes that calculus a little bit. But if they do that this year, I think that James Conner could see kind of surprising volume. But again, you really like with running backs, we want targets and we want inside the 10 stuff. And you're only getting one of those things with James Conner, which makes him, I think, at best an RB2.
He used to be one of the best junk targeters at the position. And yeah, that leaving his game has been a bit unfortunate. Kyle, something we talked about like ad nauseum this summer was the Bills receivers. I don't know if we're really any closer to an answer, but just quickly as we wrap up this game, rank the Bills receivers right now in like terms of like this, how many initial fantasy output to begin the year.
Then I was hoping to give this to Denny. I mean, like you said, there's not a clear answer. We didn't have Curtis Samuel for the 2nd and 3rd preseason games. He looks like he's going to play. He was full practice as of yesterday, which is Wednesday as the recording of this. I guess he's going to play. It seemed like Khalil Shakir is playing a little bit ahead of him. They're both primary slot players. Curtis Samuel played outside a while ago at this point, back in his Carolina days. Keon Coleman got every single snap with the starters in the first 2 preseason games and took off the 3rd preseason game. And he is the only one who I think has the upside of being really, really good. I didn't love him as a prospect. I don't think he's very likely to hit that outcome. I know for sure what Curtis Samuel is. I have a pretty good idea what Khalil Shakir is. I very much know for sure what Mac Hollins is. If we're unsure on which of these guys to start on a weekly basis, if you're still drafting which one of these guys to go after, I'm just going to take the unknown upside, who also got all the reps with the starters anyways. Like if he didn't play with the starters, I'd obviously say, well, you just can't project him for week 1. I don't think he's going to play 100% of the snaps. It's easier to play 100% of the snaps when those snaps are 2 drives in 2 separate games. But this is a potential number 1 receiver for Josh Allen, who is a big physical dude. I think and they seem to want to get him the ball a lot. I'm just going to start him. And I guess my number 2 is Khalil Shakir. I don't think anyone after them is startable because I think Mac Hollins is getting a lot of snaps as a pure wind sprinter.
Keon Coleman, the only Bills receiver I drafted with any regularity. Tom Brady's broadcasting debut comes in Cleveland as the Browns host the Cowboys as 2.5-point favorites. You don't see the Cowboys as underdogs too often right now, Denny. We barely spoke about the Browns this summer too. Another theme I'm highlighting on this show. What, if anything, is even interesting about this team? Like the quarterback doesn't seem particularly interested in football. Amari Cooper, when he was mentioned in a trade rumor, just tweeted "LOL," like I would like that kind of. Who's interesting on the Cleveland Browns, who don't have a set starting running back right now, as they wait on Nick Chubb to come back? Who do we care about on the Browns?
All right, well. We care about Jerome Ford a lot. Jerome Ford is going to get the ball a lot here, both as I think a pass catcher and the primary running back. Cowboys stink against the run, and they really, really deteriorated last year against the run. We remember Aaron Jones looking like Barry Sanders in the playoff game. So if that continues, Jerome Ford has a huge game here. The Cowboys were a massive. You ready for it? Run funnel. We're back to the funnels, folks. So
can we get like a sound drop, like a siren that we can play for that?
We're gonna a producer out. You throw that in there. Throw in a sound drop. I think it'll run through the run game here. I have some numbers to share with the folks about the Browns offense. Last year, 23rd overall in pass rate over expected. So not exactly pass heavy. 2% under their expected drop back rate in Watson starts last year. All right, and stick with me here. This is a little long one, but I think it's revealing, right?
Get ready for an over-expected adjusted era plus Woba stat.
No. It's way more complicated than that. So, in Watson starts last year, the Browns faced 2 high safeties at the league's 4th lowest rate. Okay, you're with me so far.
Mm-hmm.
And only 5 passing offenses were better against 2 high safeties over that span. That's probably good for Amari Cooper. That's all I'm saying. All right. It's Amari Cooper revenge season. I just got to get this out about this game. To me, this is a clear, catastrophic meltdown spot for the Cowboys.
I don't know about that. It's the Browns.
Isn't that every game though for the Cowboys?
No. This is in Cleveland against the league's best defense. Dak Prescott doesn't want to be around anymore. CeeDee Lamb begrudgingly is going to play for the team this year before going to the Jets next year. Like, it's just, look, nobody wants to be around. Nobody wants to do this thing. The Cowboys are going to get stomped here. So I'm playing my players in with that expectation. I think Ford is the primary.
The Browns have even worse vibes.
I was going to say I buy your argument that CD has had a miserable summer. The vibe's been bad for him. Even when you get paid, you're like, God, what am I even doing at this point? Dak is still needing to get paid. I get it. If there is a single team of sports on this planet that wants to play football less, it's the Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson has just poisoned the entire experiment.
I agree.
And of course, they go out and trade for Jerry Jeudy. Like, what receiver matches the I don't want to play football vibes? It's the guy who got talked down by Steve Smith and dropped a goose egg. Like, that's
listen. Nobody on either side of this game wants to play.
Sounds like we're betting the under.
Like,
it's why the total's at 40.5. Yeah, two supposedly good teams that can barely get a total at 40. It's supposedly because of good defense. Yeah.
No, it's just none of them want to play.
Good defense. How acute are the Cowboys supporting cast concerns, by the way, Kyle? Because CD is there, but it's CD, it's Jake Ferguson, and then it's Jalen Tolbert, ? Like, is this supporting cast as bad as it appears on ESPN roster Google search?
I mean, yes, it is definitely as bad as it appears. That was not an issue last year. The running back room was terrible last year. God bless Tony Pollard.
Better than this running back room, I'll say that.
Dude, I don't know, man. Tony Pollard just didn't have it. Just straight up was not efficient by any measure.
And guess who couldn't steal work from him? Rico Dowdle, who was on the team.
Yeah, I mean, we said this about the Zeke Pollard experience too. They're just churning mids. I don't think it's better, obviously, but I don't think it's going to be that much worse either. I think Pollard is a talent is better than Dowdle, but does that talent still exist? And did it exist last year? It certainly didn't seem to exist last year. The receivers, Michael Gallup was so physically depleted. He's not playing football this year or ever again. Like he's retired. So, I mean, I do think they're a very clear team where you look at how they're constructed and you're like, they're one injury away from, and not even at quarterback, they're one injury away at receiver from just complete and utter collapse. They made fine with that last year because you know what they did? They threw that one player and they threw a lot. And because they were bad at running the football, they did not run the football. And that worked pretty well.
That did work pretty well. I was going to ask about Zeke, but you know what also worked pretty well is not talking about Zeke anymore. The Caleb Williams era begins with the Bears as 4-point home favorites against the Tennessee Titans, Kyle Dvorchak. Denny and I recently touched on the possibility that fantasy managers could be just like systematically underrating the possibility that the Bears turn into an elite fantasy offense this year. No one's saying the Bears are going to be bad. Like, people would know they're going to be good. But I don't know if we're like really properly valuing just how good they could be. Is that too optimistic from us, or are we on to something?
No, I like this a lot. I think a lot. I mean, Caleb's a great talent. A lot of number one overall picks are great talents. I think a lot of this comes down to the talent plus the situation. And I don't think it can be understated how much better of a situation for a number one overall pick, not only number one overall pick, but one of the better number one overall picks this is than any of the others. Trevor Lawrence's wide receiver ones, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, and Laquan Treadwell in his first season. Wow. Baker Mayfield actually had a good rookie season. Jarvis Landry and Antonio Callaway. Jared Goff's,
there's a poll.
Kenny Britt and Brian Quick. And Joe Burrow's, probably the best number one overall pick, was actually pretty solid. It was T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd when Boyd still had a lot of juice left. And to no one's surprise, he obviously gets hurt, but he was on pace for 4,700 yards. And those really just honestly don't compare to what we have here, where if you just had Keenan Allen or DJ Moore and Roman Dunze, it would very clearly be the best amongst those guys I just named. The other one being Bryce Young with Adam Thielen and Jonathan Mingo, I guess, which maybe is somehow the worst of the bunch. So if you just had Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, 11th and 14th in yards per route run last year, just one of those guys. Honestly, you don't even need to have Rome. It is better than every other one of those groups, maybe sans the T. Higgins one if you really want to quibble. They have both Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Rome, and PFF ranks their offensive line number 11 heading into the season. this is an incredible spot for a rookie quarterback, not only a rookie quarterback, but one who I think is really exciting. It's not like, yeah, Jared Goff's good. I guess
he might be the we're talking about best prospect since he might be the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. Caleb.
Yeah, I said it before. He's a generational talent in terms of dog years. Like my dog might not see another quarterback prospect as good as Caleb Williams. I personally will. I'll live hopefully a long time. I've seen Andrew Luck. But in terms of short slices, our short internet attention spans, he's generational in that sense.
He is. Very, very excited about seeing this Bears offense. Denny Carter, are we excited about this Tennessee Titans offense where you and I kind of let optimism slip about Will Levis having maybe not a breakout year, but at least a usable year in fantasy? Because talk about the Bears' enhanced supporting cast. The Tennessee Titans did as much as any team, at least what they reasonably could, to upgrade their supporting cast up. What is our optimism level right now with the Tennessee Titans?
I think this team overall is going to stink.
All right, well, I think next game.
Yeah, right.
No, never mind. I thought you were going to say something cool.
My cool thing is that they should be fun for fantasy still.
All right, there we go.
They should use a lot of 3 receiver sets. They should, operate at a pretty fast clip. I think Will Levis could be fun if kind of volatile. He threw deep against 2 high safeties at a higher rate than anybody last year by like a mile, like a huge amount. I wrote about it way back in like March, and I think that's good. I mean, I think that he'll put it up for Hopkins. I think he'll put it up for Ridley. See if they can come down with a few. And they didn't get Tyler Boyd to sit on the bench. Like Boyd knows Callahan's offense.
Maybe they did. I mean, who knows? This isn't that.
Maybe they should have.
Yeah,
he's gonna run it. He's going to have a 98% route rate.
1,000% correct. Yes.
Yeah. And so as far as this game goes, this Titans Bears game, this total has risen by 3 points.
Say, Denny, is this the sneaky shootout spot?
This is the shootout. Unquote? This is the shootout. Yes. This goes back and forth. It either goes back and forth or the Bears just get out to such a lead that the Titans just have to let it rip. And in a way that's good for fantasy. Again, not good for real life, but could be good for fantasy. I like, for DFS, whatever, I like stacking this game. I don't know how popular, maybe Kyle can shed some light into how popular that would be. But I think that you need to make sure that Ridley and Hopkins are in your lineup, even if you're in like a 10-team league and you're kind of torn on them.
Very, very interesting. Kyle, sticking with the theme, you can follow up on that if you want to for Denny, but then another player I just feel like no one wanted to talk about was DeAndre Swift, because this kind of hasn't been good for back-to-back teams, despite being explosive. It wasn't like he was by no means terrible last year. Just was not great in fantasy. What are the odds DeAndre Swift is more than a low-end RB2 this year? He did not seem to get really pushed by Khalil Herbert or Roshan Johnson in Bears camp.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I entirely agree with that. Khalil began the offseason as like you can pencil him as a cut. He's not making the roster. They'll trade him for a conditional 7th, late round swap. Then he ends up making the roster. And in their first preseason game, the only one in which DeAndre Swift saw action, they immediately ran a committee. And it wasn't just that DeAndre Swift stepped out after the first snap. He came back in, which is very, obviously, if you just get 3 snaps and leave, I see that's a very bullish sign. If you come back in later, I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And the cherry on top is that they gave Velus Jones extensive run, like true position switching levels of run at running back. He had a few he had like 12 fine gadget carries in his career up to this point, as he did in college. Did you guys watch Hard Knocks? I didn't know this until I started looking into Velus
Hard Knocks is, no offense to Hard Knocks and people like Hard. I've never seen a more stale television show in my entire life than Hard Knocks.
I didn't watch it. It's not on Peacock, right? So of course I wouldn't watch it. So.
I've never heard of it. I don't have HBO.
God. Well, we're not allowed.
It's on Hibbo or whatever they call it. I don't. If it's not on Peacock, why would I even watch it? I don't know. I don't watch that stuff.
Yep.
So I didn't know this until I just stumbled upon it on the internet. The Bears declined a trade for Velus Jones and said they would not accept less than a 4th round pick.
Come on.
They have plans for this man.
He
should have been cut. And instead they're treating him as the next Cordell Patterson. I don't know. Just the more names you introduce into a backfield in which everyone chooses to bet on DeAndre Swift, the less interested I get in DeAndre Swift.
Wow.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, in general, it's good to look for reasons to be on DeAndre Swift. That is why I asked the question.
But if you're not playing Swift here, you're never going to play him.
That's
You have to play
very, very true. Yep. The Dolphins and Jaguars provide this week's little shootout that could, with our bumbling Florida squads meeting up in Miami, with a total getting near 50, 48.5, I believe, Denny. You cannot stop talking about skinny Tua Tagovailoa. Tell the folks how skinny Tua might change this Dolphins offense, which came out and made everything go burr. Sorry, I don't know why I'm adding this, Denny. It made everything go burr the first half last season. Then in the second half, it did personally bankrupted me.
Okay, let's talk about Tua's weight situation. And again, we are all about body positivity here. But the idea with him gaining a bunch of weight last year, the idea was that, this is per Fox News, the idea was that more weight would make Tua harder to throw to the ground, which would mitigate the types of ragdoll hits that led to his concussions. Okay, we all remember those. This is from a Dolphins source that talked to Fox Sports in May about Tua losing weight. Okay. Quote, I think just being more twitchy and elusive in the pocket, he will never be a runner, but it's about extending plays a little more. It's a delicate balance because he needs to stay healthy. And that's what we saw, that kind of twitchiness, that ability to avoid one rusher and dump off the ball to a tight end. We saw that in the preseason, right? And Tua in college was not a statue. He moved around. So we're getting that Tua back, okay? And I think that just changes everything for everyone in this offense.
What does it change? We don't want everything to change for Devin Achane, Kyle. We want him to remain Jamal Charles 2.0. Is that as simple as that? Is that why we could not stop drafting Devin Achane? Because we see him and we see the Jamal Charles prince who was promised.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope, right? I do think the workload is somewhat of a concern, but he was so efficient last year. And if you scale it back and back and back towards the league average, you have to go so far back to where the workload is a major concern. A guy who averaged nearly 8 yards a carry last year does not need 300 attempts. Like he had the it's a small-ish sample, but the all-time best season for a running back in terms of yards per carry. And as our data sets are smaller on the advanced metrics, he was the best in all of those as well, ever, like in a single season, again, on a limited sample, but we don't need him to get to a 300 catch or 300 rush attempt season. He just needs to be efficient, which we know he is. He doesn't have to be as efficient as he was last year, and improve slightly. He honestly doesn't even have to improve. He doesn't have to improve. If you toss out his, I don't remember how many points it was on my show sheet. I wrote trillion point. It feels close to right. Calling it a trillion point game is the second game ever. I think it's 50 some odd points. He'll never do that again. Throw that one out. In the games he played more than 6 snaps, he was on pace for 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns, having thrown out the trillion point game. Like, he doesn't have to improve. He's a small win.
Well, that's the thing, Kyle. He is going to regress. I feel like those efficiency marks are not returning. Yes, even if he regresses to, say, 5.7 yards per carry, that would be special. And he could easily be in the Jamal Charles zone where he's over 6 yards per carry, which, we rarely see outside like the Greg Roman scam. And that he would be such a special player. If he's between 5.5 and 6.5, that's rarefied air. So he doesn't even need to be as efficient as he was last year.
I think the thing is he just has so many paths, like you said. Doesn't need to. What if he's as efficient or closer? What if he's in like 6.5 to 7? That doesn't seem very likely, but it's not impossible. He did it last year, so he doesn't need any touches. Then he needs so few touches to get there. Okay, he's in that 5.5 to 6. He needs about the same amount he got last year to be just a small win. What if he gets more pass catching work? He wasn't like their clear passing downs back at all times, but they've talked about him improving his pass blocking. They've talked about him putting on a little more weight. Like, what if he can just be a guy who, he can just be a guy who they put out there on the plays in which he gets to be in space and gets free targets? You get him in space more often. I mean, that was the entire thesis of the play last year, and it crushed. And then what if he gets a lot of touches? He only needs to get to 5 yards per carry, 5.5, something like that. So the bar for efficiency was set so high last year that you can go back and back and back, and you don't need to add that much volume at one step, a little more at the next step, and he should earn more volume because he's one of the most special backs in the NFL.
I could not have said it better myself. Devin, we're all rooting for you. Denny, quickly, which Jaguars pass catcher will score the most PPR points this season? I guess not including Evan Ingram. But if your answer was Evan Ingram, you can say Evan Ingram.
Brian Thomas.
So including Evan Ingram.
Right, Brian Thomas. Talking about a guy, I liked the camp reports on Brian Thomas, and probably a guy who was underhyped this summer. Seems like he could be a special first-round player.
Real quick, on the new Dolphins defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver, when he was in Houston as the defensive coordinator, he played press coverage at one of the NFL's highest rates, and Brian Thomas ate that alive in college. So we are looking forward to that in week 1.
Denny is jamming Brian Thomas into every DFS lineup is how I interpreted that comment.
We're looking into that.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Kyle Dvorchak, are trying to move on from Dave Canales, while the Commanders are attempting to move forward with Jaden Daniels. Let's start with the former. Is there any possible way this Tampa offense is as effective as it was last season? Most people are not expecting that.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm biased towards my own opinions, which I have drafted a lot of my own opinions, a few hundred of them. But man, it's tough. They got a lot of things that went their way in sort of unsustainable ways. Baker was 4th in the NFL in turnover-worthy plays, but only 10th in interceptions. He had an above average in a positive sense drop rate from his receivers, despite attempting high difficulty throws at a high clip. He was, by sort of the more, I don't say filmy measures, but the less efficiency-based measures, 20th in PFF passing grade, 18th in completion percent over expected, which are both fine, but he parlayed that into 11th in EPA per play. So I think he outkicked the coverage a little bit last year. I don't think the offense is going to implode. They've also done things in terms of adding talent. They've added a backup running back who will be better than the backups and potentially better than the starter than they had. They also added Jalen McMillan over Trey Palmer. I think those things will help, but no, it's probably not going to be as good as it was last year.
Denny, is there a bold case to be made for the Commanders' offense, as a whole, or is this any optimism we have about the Commanders just about Jaden Daniels himself? And not the setup that he's inheriting in Washington.
Right. I'll try to keep this quick. I lean toward it just being Jaden Daniels because Cliff Kingsbury is such an uncreative play caller and user of players, right? We're seeing Terry McLaurin line up in the same exact spot every single time in the preseason.
Bank Examiner, absolutely loving that one.
Yeah. Oh, man. The bank is calling, Pat.
The Bank Examiner is waiting to go to Thailand. He is looking at Cliff's tickets saying, those will be mine, buddy.
I already blocked 5 numbers. How'd this guy get a 6th number? Stop calling me. Wait till the games are played.
The Examiner is calling my phone asking for you, just so you know. So I actually think a lot of these guys are going to be pretty disappointing in Washington, except for Zach Ertz, who
that was involuntary deep sigh.
He's listed as tight end 1, and Ben Sinnott is listed as tight end 3. Now, is that going to last?
He's H-back 1 though. Sinnott is H-back.
He's not an H-back. No. See that Sinnott is good. Sinnott, whatever, is good. But Zach Ertz is Cliff's guy, and we have to come to grips with that. I think Washington's going to be down big here. I think
they're going to be down bad here.
They're going to be down real bad.
Now, the Bucs are going to be one of the, quote, surprise horrible teams in the NFL. This is kind of an easy upset for the Commanders. People will be overly optimistic about the Commanders.
Really? Oh, no, man. I think Bucs will cook here. I mean, I don't think they're good, but I think Washington's truly an abysmal team.
I mean, Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury, what could go wrong?
Right. Yeah. Get ready to speak. I don't know, UFL.
Get ready to speak
LinkedIn, Dan Quinn.
Get ready to speak Fox's number 5 color commentator next fall.
Yeah, I mean, right. Dan Quinn can't survive this season. Let's just be real about that. And anyway, you made me lose my train of thought. Anyway, Zach Ertz, he's going to see a bunch of looks in this game because they're going to be passing the whole time. But yeah, I'm not interested. I'm just not interested. Oh, another thing, Noah Brown. I wouldn't be surprised if Noah Brown ends up being the wide receiver 1 of this offense. I'm just going to say it.
You had to tell me which team Noah Brown was on. You let me know by the wide receiver 1 thing. You had to tell me a little bit of info before I knew who you were talking about.
Noah Brown.
Yeah. Denny, by the way, you should never be allowed to regain your train of thought if it's about Zach Ertz. The Vikings and Giants square off in one of week 1's sleepiest affairs, Mr. Denny Carter. Give people the bull case on Sam Darnold. Is that still something you're doing, or have you finally moved on from that?
No, not here. I actually think this is a really ugly spot. I think this is a spot, my replies on the X platform are going to be disastrous. You guys are going to destroy me next week. I mean, Darnold, this is an absolute collapse spot. I think.
Hold on, they have a good pass rush. They have a bad secondary, is what I understand. About the Giants.
I think the Giants win this game comfortably. Is my feeling on the game. So the Giants are good against the pass. First of all, I mean they were last year. They put pressure on the passer. We all know
pressure the passer. They're supposedly not great in coverage.
Well, that shouldn't be an issue for Sam Darnold, right? He doesn't have a thing where he sees literal aberrations on the field because of the pass rush.
The one thing that Darnold will have going for him is volume, right? So let's see. The Vikings were over their expected dropback rate in 15 to 17 games last year. No one had a higher neutral pass rates than the Vikings. So even when they had a lead, they threw it. And I have a little special one here. Giants opponents last year had the second highest neutral pass rate. So there's going to be a lot of throwing for the Vikings. But I don't like this spot for Darnold. No.
This season feels like the Calvin Johnson 1,900-yard season, which I think the Lions were dreadful that year.
Man,
it was pretty young.
But... They were post-hype. They went to sleep. After the hype is what happened to that Lions team. Yeah, they were hyped. It was after a 40 touchdown. This is one of my welcome to fantasy football moments.
Yeah.
Went all in on Matthew Stafford after his humongous season, I believe in 2010. Surely this is the real Matthew Stafford, and it was not.
He threw 21.
He was absolutely unbelievably bad. By the way, Sam Darnold dropping back into seeing FDR in a wheelchair as Ghost. Like, what is that doing there? That's really weird. And he gets absolutely destroyed by Brian Burns. What? Come on, everyone's thinking it. Everyone's thinking it.
I was thinking, I don't know, Casper. Or
I was trying to think of the most random ghost I could think of.
That was good. I like it.
So, appears I did that. Is that Jesse James?
Okay.
The Outlaw?
So I just want to be clear.
Is that Bruce Willis from The Sixth Sense? He was dead the whole time, so he's got us.
We reference FDR and Brian Quick on this podcast. These are two things I didn't think would happen.
Two things we did not think about. Kyle, real quick, any Giants to care about beyond Malik Neighbors? And why is the answer no?
Devin Singletary should see a lot of touches, and I think you can stash in your deeper leagues Tyrone Tracy. I'm not really going to mess with the Darius Slaytons of this team, though.
I just realized why FDR is haunting MetLife Stadium, by the way. I mean, it is the New York area.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
That's why
that makes sense.
He's made his way over to New Jersey and is now haunting MetLife Stadium. I have no idea why. I also have no idea why I'm still talking. We'll be right back after this. It's a rematch of a super wild card weekend thriller. This Sunday night, Matthew Stafford and the Rams face Jared Goff and the Lions in the Motor City. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. Our third of 3 NBC telecasts this weekend. We hope you join all 3. And yep, the showdown in Detroit is a total north of 50, the only one this week so far, I believe. And the Lions getting about 3 or 4 points as favorites. Kyle, there were a few debates on both sides with these teams this summer, but none bigger than Puka Nacua versus Cooper Kupp. Is Cooper reclaiming his wide receiver 1 mantle, or can we believe in Puka Nacua despite the injuries, including his summer knee issue?
Yeah, I believe he was full practice as of both Wednesday, and I assume again today as well. Really no concerns with the health if he's full practice. I mean, that's as
well.
Good as
We've learned that full practice doesn't necessarily mean they're actually healthy. It just means they're practicing in full. But yeah,
that's fair. You know, like we got that with, like,
I'm spooked by the Greg Rosenthal thing. Greg Rosenthal, one of my former bosses, and basically implying that he had a tip not to believe in Puka this year. I'm very scared now.
I don't know. Like you gotta. Sometimes you just gotta say this was the greatest rookie season of all time. The guys who do that are, I mean, it was better than Jamar Chase's rookie season, but Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Randy Moss, like the one quote not hit was Anquan Bolden, who had a really good career. He just didn't have the like Randy Moss career, right? And you know, I see a lot of the it's about 12 games they shared together, Puka and Cooper Kupp. They went almost dead even on targets. It was 100 for Puka Nacua and 99 for Cooper Kupp. They both had very similar targets per route run. That doesn't feel great unless you actually look at the Puka Nacua game logs, in which he was on pace for 1,600 yards in those games. That's what I expect from a true superstar receiver, is even when more really strong target competition is added, you know what you do with that? You become more and more and more efficient. You make the most of your admittedly scaled back number of opportunities, and he did just that. He had a better rookie season by yards per game and yards per route run than Jamar Chase has ever had, than Garrett Wilson has ever had, than Drake London has ever had. If you include his postseason, you can also say that for Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was it was legitimately a superstar season, and the dude was in his first NFL season. To me, I think there are different worlds in which we're taking him at the 103.
Denny, good breakdown, Kyle. What is the Kyren versus Corum panic level right now? Where's the meter at on a 1 to 10 scale?
Well, yeah, so we freaked out, and me included, when Sean McVay came out of nowhere and he said, yeah, Kyron's going to return punts.
To be clear, some of us have been freaking out since draft weekend, me.
And, right, but then he comes out and he says, yeah, Corum's going to return punts.
No, kicks.
I think Corum's on
Corum's
kick. Yeah,
kick.
he's on kick return duty.
Which is way different.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think we do have to operate under the assumption that Kyren is the clear number one for now, and we'll see.
This is down to Sean McVay. Here's that attention you ordered me.
Yeah. I do think Sean McVay really likes to mix it up.
How dare you say that, Denny? No, listen. We really believe in both these running backs, and so I don't know what I'm going to do sometimes, even before I do it.
The bigger his pecs get, the more galaxy brained he gets. So if you drafted Kyren Williams, I think that there's a good chance he gets there for you this week. It's going to be probably a high scoring game. Hopefully he has pass game involvement, but we will. I mean, we're going to parse these Rams backfield week 1 numbers until we're blue in the face. We're going to do it. I swear.
We will. And Sean McVay can't ever make up his mind. Is he a committee guy or is he a bell cow guy? He's had success.
I think he's a committee guy when his running backs are bad. That's what I've determined.
He's had success with both. I think it's not necessarily just the skill, it's the injuries thing. He got burned by Todd Gurley's health. I think he's worried he's going to get burned by Kyren Williams' health. I don't necessarily know if it's a skill level thing. I think more as like a durability thing. And I think that maybe he got lucky with Kyren staying largely healthy for the stretch run last year. That I just think he does not want to get burned by being all in on one guy. And yeah, I'm a panic believer for Blake Corum. We were talking about Jahmyr Gibbs and JMO, but I don't know if we really have time.
Oh, I have something on JMO.
Burning thoughts on JMO, Denny.
So we saw him much more involved in the offense at the end of last year. In 3 playoff games, he ran a route on 76% of Jared Goff's dropbacks. He was only targeted on 11% of those routes, but that might not be shocking.
Who could have seen this coming? Doesn't get any targets.
But it's not shocking considering his ADOT was almost 19. So we're hoping that maybe that ADOT gets to somewhere around 12 or 13.
That won't happen, but I am very much hoping that because I have him in many.
I think it will. I think that we're going to be very surprised about his usage and his involvement.
Well, I actually
nugget and we can move on.
No bit. I do think if the breakout happens, this whole thing is thrown into turmoil. The Sam Laporta case, the Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I agree.
Kyle, what were you going to say?
I was going to throw you a quick Jahmyr Gibbs stat, and then we can move on from this team because we got more teams to talk about. Last year, David Montgomery, 17 carries inside the 5, Jahmyr Gibbs, 8. That was quite literally to a T, the exact same split as CMC Elijah Mitchell. Jahmyr Gibbs' goal line role is that of a backup.
Well, no, we could get into that a lot deeper, but we're not going to do that.
It's the same as Elijah Mitchell. What's going on there?
Kyle and I got in a real life shouting match about this. Oh, Elijah Mitchell's always filling in for one. It was totally different. But
Jahmyr Gibbs never filled in for starting running back. Who has a goal line role who got hurt.
Don't look it up. The Jim Harbaugh era begins with the Chargers as sleepy 3-point favorites over the Raiders. Denny Carter. Did Justin Herbert's summer foot injury just kill any hope of Herbert exceeding fantasy expectations, at least early on in the season, and what we were expecting to be a conservative run-based offense?
Yeah, so he is on the injury report because the league forced the Chargers to put him on the injury report. But he apparently he's okay. I've kind of thrown the idea out there that maybe he would be used as a rusher more than we think on design runs in this Greg Roman offense. I still think that that's possibly in the range of outcomes. Pat is highly skeptical of that.
I believed that until he suffered the foot injury. Then I think understandably, Jim Harbaugh will be like, why would we do that now? Like, why would we risk it?
Yeah. So I'm not, dying to play anybody in this game. The Chargers backfield is probably going to be split between Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. I guess if you want to like throw like Josh Palmer in your lineup in a deep league, he might be the wide receiver one. It's hard to say. It's pretty ugly.
Very hard to say. Kyle, give us 30 seconds on the Chargers wide receivers that Denny just mentioned.
DJ Chark doesn't look like he's going to play. He didn't practice Wednesday. Didn't see him at practice Thursday, per Chris Rim, beat reporter for the Chargers. He had a legitimate chance, as we saw in the preseason, to just play over Quentin Johnston. I honestly don't even know that Quentin Johnston assumes a full-time role if Chark isn't there. To me, this is clear wheels up for the guys who we know actually have roles: Josh Palmer, Ladd McConkey, and Dynasty stash Brendan Rice.
Denny, very quick check-in on the Chargers backfield.
Yeah, right. So I would think that Gus Edwards
Denny.
will be I was yawning. Gus Edwards will be the inside the 10 option here for Greg Roman
and I'm ruined
if that holds up. If the Baltimore usage holds up. J.K. Dobbins I think would probably be the pass catching back, since Gus Edwards has just really never done that. How much that will matter, I don't know. So I actually think Dobbins might be like the between the 20s guy, which is not a role that we're interested in. And remember earlier I said ideally we want targets for our running backs, so we want inside the 10. Well, these two are going to split those up pretty much down the middle.
J.K. Dobbins is the number one player where at the end of the summer I was like, why do I have J.K. Dobbins on essentially every team I've drafted? It's mostly because he did not ever have an 80.
I mean, he was going so late,
We'll talk about the Raiders next week. The Seattle Seahawks are nearly touchdown home favorites as they host the Broncos for Bo Nix's NFL debut, Kyle. Denny and I have lots of Seahawks optimism, but there were further rumblings this week that it could be run-based, I believe from DK Metcalf, who also said, though, like everything was awesome and like he was awesome. I mean, that was actually Gino talking about DK Metcalf. Do you agree or not agree with Denny and I's Seahawks offense optimism?
Yeah, I'm in for it, at least as much as they don't have to be, Ryan Grubb ran an incredibly sort of nerdy modern offense where he's just spread them and shred them, throw deep. It's very easy when you have 3 NFL caliber receivers, like borderline NFL caliber offensive line. I don't think they're getting there, but this team does have, a good starting trio of receivers, a quarterback who can sling it. And we showed, as Denny pointed out, I think this was a few weeks ago on this show, the final preseason drive that all of them got together was just 3 wide, pass, chunk plays. If that's just in the range, it makes them all exciting plays. And they were such a, not even super run heavy, but just slow, meandering team last year. They were easily the last team in the NFL in terms of total plays run. If they just ran more plays, it would be an improvement, let alone the fact that I think the offense will be better designed and more, part of that design will be simply passing more.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't have to be just like explosive plays. This needs everything. There's so much room for improvement in every area that I think we will get from Ryan Grubb, a much more modern offensive thinker than what Pete Carroll allowed. Denny, is Sean Payton still a modern offensive thinker? And what is the final verdict on if there are enough weapons to make this Bo Nix scam work? And not like an every week starter or anything like that, of course, in fantasy. But does Bo Nix have enough weapons to turn any heads whatsoever?
That's hard to say because like Cortland Sutton, he got away with it last year. He doesn't create any separation downfield. I guess like Marvin Mims, is set to see a good route participation rate. Hey, we got that going for us. No. He has to.
Marvin Mims, he was a holdover.
This time it counts.
Marvin Mims was a holdover from the previous front office, at least. That's why they didn't check my. Nope. He was drafted by Sean Payton.
He was drafted, and Sean Payton didn't even know who he was. Drafted him anyway. Maybe Mims emerges as that guy. But can I just real quick about Bo Nix's preseason? 64% of Bo Nix's passes in the preseason came behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. Okay. He had a 0% turnover worthy play rate. He had a 0% big time throw rate, exactly how we like it in Denver. Okay. We're not making good throws. We're not making bad throws. And we are checking down to Jaleel and we're checking down to Javonte. And that's it, folks. Okay. So I really do think, by the way, both of these running backs need to be in lineups this week, especially in PPR. The fact that you got Jaleel McLaughlin in the 12th, don't let that freak you out. Get him in your lineup.
Yeah, just to double down on what Denny said, because that ties right into the running backs, which I was going to talk about. Jaleel was really freaking talented last year. He's 13th in PFF run grade, 10th in yards after contact per attempt, 5th in missed tackles forced per attempt, 6th in PFF rush yards over expected per attempt, 3rd in yards per route run, 5th in PFF receiving grade. A lot of those numbers were single digits. Some of them were low double digits. He's a really talented player. And now the role, as Denny said, this is a scam of all scams, baby. Yeah. It's going to be great. For Javonte too, but I'm excited about Jaleel. And as Denny said, I literally drafted him as I got Blake Corum and Trey Benson, who I am not starting week 1. I drafted those guys knowing I could get PPR scam Jaleel a few rounds later. He's a very good starting option if you went more of the 0 RB and the contingent 0 RB heavy guys.
Jaleel, the kind of guy, especially once bye week start, could be a surprise top 30 running back. And someone to be excited about. The Aaron Rodgers, this time it counts, Rolling Thunder review arrives in Santa Clara, California on Monday night as 4.5-point underdogs, versus the 49ers, Denny. How much overall optimism do we harbor for an improved but still very shallow Jets offense being quarterbacked by someone over the age of 40 who had his worst season since his first-year starter when he last played football 2 years ago?
Boy, when you put it like that, so much optimism. Well, look, we are teetering on the edge of disaster for both Breece Hall and for Garrett Wilson.
Oblivion is nigh in this Jets offense.
You can see the void is staring at you if you drafted them. Okay, this is a horrible matchup. This is as rough as it gets. I think Aaron Rodgers has said wow. Thanks, NFL. You're easing me back in against, let me check my notes. Oh, yes, the best defense in the NFL.
Yeah, he was ooh, Achilles feeling a little tight. Maybe I'll sit out one more game.
I mean, who could blame him? Anyway, so this is a bad spot. You're not starting Rodgers, even in Superflex, I don't think. It's just Hall, and it's just Wilson, and then it's your guy, Conk Daddy, and that's it, really. There's not much to it. There's not much to this offense.
Conk Daddy.
The Conk Father.
The Conk Father. More and more people are saying. Kyle, very quickly, does anything change for this 49ers offense this year? They are running back, quite literally, the exact same supporting cast, especially with Ricky Pearsall, unfortunately, beginning the year on the NFI list.
Yeah, I don't think much changes at all. There possibly could have been some shakeup with Pearsall, and I guess now you can maybe add Jacob Cowling. What we saw, Jawan Jennings get extended. He plays a good role as a run blocker, and they just do not run 3 wide. They run at one of the lowest rates. Not much is going to change. Another thing that could have potentially changed is, let's ease CMC's workload up as he approaches 30. And then Eli Mitchell, the guy they've trusted forever, is no longer on, no longer part of the team. He's on IR, season-ending IR as well. I really don't think they changed much because they didn't have to.
They did not have to. The one thing I think might change is by the end, I swear, listen, I said I would stop doubting Brock Purdy. I'm just saying, at the end of last year, a lot of those cross-field, cross-body throws, he was getting punished a little more than he did earlier in his career. And I just wonder if the defenses are finally on the case.
Jets play a lot of zone coverage. That's usually good for Debo, usually bad for Ayuk.
Purdy, we see you, man. Just you thought you won. Guess what, buddy? You guess what? You got something else coming, man.
I'm sorry to say, Pat, he's going to the Hall of Fame.
Brock, I know you were coin toss away from winning the Super Bowl, but guess what? You're not even good. We're gonna find out this year. We're gonna find out this year. I swear, I'm on to you. I got dirt on you, doggy. Doggy.
Next topic.
The Cincinnati Bengals host the New England Patriots as Week 1's biggest favorites, even with questions about Jamar Chase's workload. Kyle, Denny, and I keep talking about these curdled Bengals vibes. Is something amiss, and how do you break down this oft-talked about Bengals backfield?
I was hoping you read that verbatim. The word curdled is good. I will say I don't think the vibes are quite as rancid as you guys do, or at least as this question prompts. We saw Chase returns to practice.
This is a loaded prompt.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it though. I'm glad you read it verbatim because it was a good use of a thesaurus, I'd say. So, but we see Jamar Chase comes back to practice. Joe Burrow immediately tells the reporters, what else is he going to tell reporters? But he says, Chase is ready. He's really good. There's not a ton of turnover on this team in terms of the top 2 receivers are the same. The quarterback's the same. Head coach is the same. Not too awfully concerned. As far as the backfield goes, I love Chase Brown. I think he was a better pick at cost than Zach Moss. But Zach Moss is a good, consistent, hard-hitting runner who's had good success rates year over year over year. He has a size advantage over Chase Brown. I think he gets the goal line work. And if this offense lives up to the hype, that's worth a lot. I still think I kind of want to rather have the mystery box. It could be anything in Chase Brown. But Zach Moss, I mean, I'm going to have my start sits out by the time most people listen to this, depending on, I guess, I don't know. Most people probably listen Friday. I'll have it out Friday afternoon. He's going to be on the starts. I think he's in a good spot this week.
It could be anything, even including Chase Brown. I do think Chase Brown could be a very, very important player in fan. I didn't get enough of Chase Brown. We probably underrated the possibility that Chase Brown just becomes a 3-down back for the Bengals.
No, it's not happening.
Denny is probably right. Denny, speaking of not happening, the New England Patriots, do we care about any of these guys not named Ramondre Stevenson?
Not really. I do want to say Stevenson is in a quietly, everybody relax, quietly good spot.
He is. I must admit that he is.
Okay. So I actually think that this is not going to be a blowout. I think the Patriots. No,
it will be. If this game were in New England, you could maybe get away with this. But
Bengals allowed the second highest yards before contact per rush last season, allowed the 5th highest explosive rush rate. Stevenson is going to see a lot of work. I like him a lot. I do.
This feels like a game where the Patriots hit their run game quota and then get annihilated.
Yep. Denny, get ready to learn Ohio River, buddy. This game is in Ohio, not Massachusetts.
Are we sure about that?
We're not actually. Yeah.
Can someone check that? I thought it was in New England.
We're not sure about it. No, it's in Cincinnati. It is. Yep. It's never been more over for you.
Nevertheless.
I hope someone we can't find it. Yeah, no, it is in Cincinnati. I just double checked.
Okay.
Also double checked that we don't really care about Panthers Saints. I mean, one team might be fake good. The Saints are always fake good. Actually bad, of course. 8-9, 9-8. Current Panthers optimism level, Denny Carter.
Not
that says it all.
I mean, come on.
Listen, if Dave Canales pulls this off, he's a Hall of Fame coach.
Truly.
3 straight years, he goes Geno, Baker, Bryce Young. He's a Hall of Fame coach.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned on the show, I'll just reiterate, Bryce Young did not look like the quarterback from last year during the preseason. He actually kept his head up and looked like he wanted to throw downfield more. So they could be working on some things. Both of these teams were extreme run funnels. That's what I got. Chris Olave could go crazy here with more motion. We got motion in New Orleans. We got motion, folks. We got the cheat motion.
Yes, they just start cheating. Saints just cheat like every other team.
Oh, they're gonna. And Olave's been really good. Saints, obviously backward franchise. They don't use motion usually. They got a Shanahan guy. It's gonna happen.
Kyle, final word of the show on the New Orleans Saints and your current optimism level for this offense.
Medium to high. As far as versus cost, Taysom Hill was underpriced all summer, even as he rose. Chris Olave has been sort of in that Drake London tier and Garrett Wilson even tier of, I'm pretty sure this guy's really good at football. Could we get him a professional head coach or professional offensive coordinator? We may have sort of bought a Dollar Tree version of that.
What a surprise. Kyle high on Ohio State guy. But
look, sorry, we turn out the best wide receivers in the NFL every freaking year.
It's true. Very, very high on Kyle's start sit. Very, very high on Denny's regression files. Very, very high on the funnel report. Very high on my own rankings, which I'm going to keep updated between now and kickoff Sunday morning. There's so much great stuff at Rotoworld.com, not just from the three of us. Denny Carter's. What word do you want to
I'm
get?
Sorry, just real quick. I just wanted to mention tomorrow, Friday at noon Eastern.
Of course. Yep.
I have my Q&A on the YouTube, so check that out.
Every Monday, Kyle and I will have a Q&A on the NFL and NBC YouTube page at 6 p.m. Eastern, breaking down waivers. So just so much good stuff. Thank you for coming with us for our week 1 preview. We're going to do it every week. We'll be back Sunday night breaking down the entire slate. So for Kyle, for Denny, I'm Pat. Talk to you later.